poor waitress rescues a collapsing billionaire. His response alters her entire life. What if a single act of kindness could shift the course of two lives forever? Rachel wiped down the same sticky table for the third evening time, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the diner's checkered flooring. At 35, she'd spent over a decade serving coffee and pie at Mel's Corner Diner, watching the world transform through grease-speckled windows, while her own life stubbornly remained unchanged. The late shift meant fewer customers, but every tip mattered when you're raising a 7-year-old daughter alone. That quiet Tuesday night in October, with autumn rain tapping rhythmically on the glass, Rachel noticed the man seated in the corner booth. He'd ordered a black coffee an hour earlier, but hadn't touched it. Something about the way he pressed a hand to his chest, the pale sheen across his forehead, made her stomach twist with concern. She had seen that look before. Her father, moments before the heart attack that took him. Rachel approached with the coffee pot. "More coffee, hun?" she asked gently, noting how shallow his breathing sounded. Just the check, please," he managed, voice strained yet polite. His name, though she didn't know it yet, was David Harrison. His suit likely cost more than Rachel earned in half a year, but wealth couldn't hide the exhaustion etched into his face. He had driven 3 hours from the city after another grueling 18-hour day running his technology empire. His doctor's warnings about stress had echoed in his mind as he pulled off the highway, desperate for someplace quiet to think. Rachel placed the check down and hesitated. Her daughter always joked that she cared too much about strangers, but Rachel couldn't ignore her instincts. "You feeling okay? You look a little pale." David tried to offer a smile, tried to wave off her concern like he'd done countless times before, but then the pain struck. Sharp, crushing, radiating down his left arm like a bolt. The coffee cup slipped from his grasp, shattering against the floor. "Sir!" Rachel rushed to him as David doubled over, his face ashen. "Sir, stay with me. What's your name?" "David," he gasped, pressing a trembling hand against his chest. Can't believe." Rachel's emergency training took over instantly. She'd taken CPR classes after losing her father, vowing never again to feel helpless. "David, look at me. I'm Rachel. You're having chest pains, but you're going to be all right." Her hands trembled as she dialed 911, but her voice stayed firm. "I need an ambulance at Mel's Corner Diner, Route 34. Middle-aged man, severe chest pain, difficulty breathing." She stayed kneeling beside him, one hand on his shoulder. "They're coming, David. Just breathe with me." The diner had emptied except for old Pete at the counter, watching silently with wide, worried eyes. Rachel fetched a clean towel, dampened it, and gently pressed it against David's forehead. "Is there someone I should call? Family?" she asked quietly. David shook his head weakly. There was no one. His ex-wife had remarried, his parents were gone, and his business partners were more rivals than friends. Here he was, a man worth more money than whole towns, and a complete stranger was the only person holding his hand as pain tore through his chest. Just stay," he whispered. "Please." Rachel squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing through the rain-soaked night. David's grip on her hand was the only thing anchoring him to consciousness, while Rachel's steady presence held back his rising panic. Neither realized that this single moment would reshape everything that mattered to both of them. The paramedics burst into the diner with organized urgency. As they lifted David onto the stretcher, he reached for Rachel's hand again. "Don't. Leave," he pleaded through the oxygen mask. "I'll follow in my car," she promised, though she didn't know why. Her shift wasn't over, her babysitter was paid only until midnight, and this man was a stranger. But something in his eyes reminded her of Lily during thunderstorms, scared and needing someone to stay close. At Mercy General Hospital, Rachel sat in the waiting area, still wearing her coffee-stained uniform, feeling wildly out of place among the sterile white walls. She'd called Mrs. Chen next door to watch Lily, explaining she'd be late, but not why. What could she say? That she was waiting for news about a man she'd met 2 hours earlier? A doctor in green scrubs approached. "Are you here for David Harrison?" Rachel nodded, her heart catching. "He's stable. Massive stress-induced cardiac episode, but we treated it in time. You saved his life by acting quickly. He's been asking for you." Walking into the cardiac unit felt unreal. David looked smaller in the hospital bed, surrounded by softly beeping monitors, but his eyes lit up the moment she entered. "You came," he said, voice faint but stronger. "I said I would," Rachel replied, pulling a chair beside him. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but alive." David studied her face carefully for the first time. Kind eyes, worry lines from too many long days, hands shaped by hard work. "He needed to tell you something," he said. Rachel waited as he gathered the courage. "The name on my credit card? Harrison Industries? That's my company. I'm not just David. I'm David Harrison." He watched her reaction. People usually shifted the moment they recognized his name. Rachel only frowned. "Should that mean something to me?" For the first time in years, David laughed, really laughed. Here was someone who'd saved his life without knowing his net worth, without calculating what she might gain. "I run a technology company, a pretty big one. I'm, well, very wealthy." Rachel's expression changed, not with greed or excitement, but with something that made his heart drop. Distance, caution, that look people wore when they felt they didn't belong. "Oh," she murmured, standing slowly. "I should probably go. You must have people who should be here instead of—" "No," David caught her hand. "Please. There's no one else. And you're here because you chose to be, not because of who I am. Do you know how rare that is?" Rachel hesitated before sitting again. "I'll stay a little while." David closed his eyes, still holding her hand, feeling safe for the first time in years. But neither of them noticed the photographer outside the window. By the next morning, their story was front-page news. 3 days later, Rachel's quiet life exploded. Newspapers printed a photo of her holding David's hand in the hospital. "Billionaire's mystery angel. Local waitress saves tech mogul's life." Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. "Mom, people with cameras are outside," Lily whispered through her torn curtains. At 7, she didn't understand why strangers wanted her mother. Rachel had to call in sick, the first time in 3 years, because reporters crowded outside Mel's diner. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like her privacy had been sold. Her phone buzzed again. David, calling for the 4th time. "Please, Rachel, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," she replied wearily. "You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have helped." "But I want to help. I know about your student loans, your daughter's medical bills." Rachel froze. "How do you know that?" Silence. "I had someone look into. I needed to know how to help the right way." "You investigated me?" Her voice cracked. "Like I'm some sort of charity case?" David sat in his penthouse luxury, surrounded by meaningless luxury. He had handled everything wrong. "It wasn't like that," he whispered. "I just wanted—" "I know what you wanted," she snapped softly. "Rich man feels guilty, throws money at poor waitress, everyone feels better." She wiped away tears. "Well, I'm not your project." "That's not fair," David whispered. "You don't know what it's like. Every friend, every relationship, people want something. But you were different. And now I know who you really are. Someone who looks into people instead of talking to them." She hung up. 2 weeks passed slowly. The media faded when a celebrity scandal took over headlines. But the damage remained. Rachel returned to work, enduring whispers and unwanted attention. David couldn't focus on his empire, replaying the moment he'd lost the only genuine connection he'd had in years. Everything changed the night Rachel found the envelope slid under the diner door. Inside lay a handwritten letter and a small photo. "Rachel, I've rewritten this 12 times. I was wrong to investigate your life and to think money could fix what I broke. I need you to understand something about that night." David explained how loneliness had been killing him long before the heart attack, how her staying beside him had been the first real human connection he'd felt in years. Inside the envelope was a photo of David at age 7, standing beside his mother in a diner uniform. She had worked multiple jobs, raising him alone. "She would have liked you," the letter ended. "She would have said you have good hands, hands that help without measuring the cost. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for one more chance to know the person who saw me as just David." Rachel wiped her eyes and exhaled. The next morning, she drove to Harrison Industries. The glass tower felt intimidating, but she remembered the vulnerable man she'd held in the hospital. When David appeared, hope and fear battled in his expression. "I got your letter," Rachel said softly, "and I think your mother was right about good hands. But next time you want to know something about me, just ask." David's smile was warmer than any corporate victory he'd ever experienced. "Can I start with a question?" he asked. "Start with coffee," Rachel replied. "Somewhere that serves better coffee than Mel's." 6 months later, Rachel stood inside the community center David quietly helped her open. Lily helped serve lunch to families in need. The Second Chances Cafe wasn't a charity, it was a partnership. Rachel managed the programs with her newly completed social work degree. David handled the business side discreetly. Their friendship grew slowly, built on honest conversations and shared stories about childhoods and mistakes. David learned about Rachel's father, her unfinished nursing dreams, her determination to give Lily a better life. Rachel learned about David's lonely youth, his mother's death, and his failed marriage that success couldn't mend. "Mom, Mr. David's here," Lily called to the door. He adored him, his patience, his attention, his kindness. David arrived with grocery bags, rolling up his shirts. "How many today?" 43 families, Rachel said, tying her apron. They worked side by side, listening to people rebuilding their lives. David realized that wealth meant something only when it touched real faces. Rachel learned that accepting help didn't erase strength. "You know," David said quietly one afternoon, "I never thanked you properly." "For what?" Rachel asked. "For saving my life twice, once in the diner and once when you came to my office." "We saved each other," Rachel corrected gently. "This place, I never could have imagined it before." Later, after the center closed and Lily was asleep, David and Rachel sat on her apartment steps, watching the sunset. The reporters were long gone, the headlines forgotten, leaving only 2 people who'd found something rare. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't worked that night?" David asked. "I think we would have crossed paths anyway," Rachel said. "People who need the same kind of healing eventually find their way to each other." David nodded. His mother used to say that angels looked like ordinary people doing humble things with extraordinary hearts. "She would have loved this place, and she would have liked you," Rachel whispered. As stars blinked awake across the sky, Rachel felt a deep sense of purpose, and David felt something he hadn't expected. Peace, built not on wealth, but on being truly seen. Sometimes the most beautiful changes come from the simplest acts of caring.